Welcome to the Wellness Roundtable, a new podcast created by the Global Wellness Institute. This is Season 1, Longevity, and I'm your host, Alexia Brue, an exited media founder turned longevity entrepreneur. Together, we'll explore the scientific and societal frenzy around all things longevity, examining whether it's a golden age or a gold rush. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our partner, Fountain Life, for supporting this podcast. When was the last time you really thought about your health before something went wrong? We're living in an age where science and technology have unlocked the ability to detect disease before it shows symptoms and take action when it matters most. That's the foundation of Fountain Life, a visionary longevity center co-founded by Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, and Dr. Bill Kapp. They've brought together some of the world's most advanced minds in medicine to flip the healthcare model from reactive to proactive. Fountain Life is redefining what it means to take control of your health using AI-powered multimodal diagnostics that go far beyond the standard checkup and inform a personalized optimization plan designed to maximize your vitality and extend your health span. Fountain Life has been a trusted partner of the Global Wellness Institute for many years, and we share the common mission to empower health and wellness worldwide through proactive medicine, scientific innovation, and technology. This is the future of healthcare, and you don't have to wait for it. So choose to live without limits. Head to fountainlife.com to learn more. That's fountainlife.com, because a healthy person has 100 dreams, but a sick person has only one. Welcome back to the Wellness Roundtable Longevity, where we explore the science and strategies for living not just longer, but better. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Carolina Oliveira, co-founder and CEO of OneSkin, a company that's redefining skincare through the lens of longevity. At OneSkin, it's not about cosmetics, it's about cellular health. Dr. Oliveira and her team are treating skin as both a powerful biomarker and a modifiable driver of aging. We talk about the science behind their OS1 peptide, why senescent or zombie cells matter, and how skin aging connects to systemic inflammation. You'll hear how OneSkin is cutting through beauty industry noise with real clinical validation and why your skincare routine might belong next to your supplements. We also explore how OneSkin fits into the broader longevity stack and what it means when thought leaders like Peter Diamandis and David Sinclair are using it themselves. Let's dive in. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Carolina Oliveira, co-founder of OneSkin, to the Wellness Roundtable.
Thank you for having me, Alexia. So excited for this conversation.
You know, OneSkin has quickly become one of the most intriguing companies at the intersection of longevity and skincare. And as we know, skincare isn't just about appearance. It's the body's largest organ. It's our first line of defense from the outside world. And it's one of the most visible indicators of biological aging. And yet, until recently, it's really been overlooked as part of the longevity conversation. So I really wanted to have you on today, since your company is turning skin into a serious biomarker and viable longevity intervention. So I'd love to kick it off with learning more about your background in academic research and then what inspired you to take this entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So I was passionate about science since a young age. I was drawn to solve big issues related to human health. So I went on and pursued my major in biochemistry, and then I got my PhD in stem cell biology and tissue engineering. I want to research an area that I could eventually create an impact, that I would help humans to live better, healthier. And in the beginning, I thought that would be by curing diseases or finding therapies for when people are already sick, until I started to realize that if we can actually treat the root cause of all of these chronic diseases that we experience as we grow older, and if instead we can extend the time that we are all healthy and functional, this would be so much more impactful. And I'm a person that's really passionate about life in general. And I don't want to think that as I grow older, I'll be limited in terms of the things that I can do, in terms of mobility. And so if I can dedicate my life to help humans to extend this period that they are healthy, functional, that they can keep enjoying life regardless of their age, that's the area that I want to focus on. And so skin is the way that we're getting to this longevity area, but it's so connected if we think that the skin has this large impact in our overall health. So I feel that I'm in some ways complementing a gap in this longevity field because, as you said, skin was being overlooked in terms of their role in our health.
And so tell us, where did your studies take place? Where did you spend your early life?
Yeah, so I grew up in Brazil. I come from a very small town, and I left home when I was 15 to pursue better education. I did my master's and PhD in the Federal University of Minas Gerais, is the state that I grew up. I did part of my PhD here in the US. And then I was researching this area of stem cell biology and tissue engineering. And towards the end of my PhD, I joined with three other colleagues, and we started to think how we could translate that research that we were developing for so many years in academia. And initially, the way that we thought of translating the research was using this expertise of growing tissues in the lab. So essentially, we could grow like mini hearts, mini brains, mini skins. And our initial goal was to replace animal testing and use these human tissues to test safety and efficacy of new drugs and new products. And eventually we started to get more traction from the cosmetic industry because the cosmetic industry really needs to replace animal testing. It's not ethical. It's not even a good model for you to test new cosmetics. And we spent 2 years in Brazil trying to get this idea to the world, but there was no significant market in Brazil. There was no significant ecosystem for us as entrepreneurs to build our business. And so we got a chance to relocate to Silicon Valley in 2016. And we came to join a biotech accelerator, which is essentially a place that helps like scientists to start their companies. So they offer the mentorship on the science side, but also on the business side. They connect you with investors and mentors and potential partners. And here, what we realized as we started to focus more on the skin testing, there was this massive anti-aging industry, but there is still a lack of transparency in terms of the efficacy of those products. A lot of products are based on hype and marketing, but they are not delivering what they're promised. And we thought that with our expertise of growing skins and measuring the skin's age, we could validate if these products that are claiming to be anti-age, if they actually work. A few months in, we start testing like the best sellers anti-aging products. We realized that most products that claim to be anti-aging, they could not actually reverse the age of the skin. They could not really rejuvenate the skin. And some of them were actually causing toxicity, inflammation, and potentially accelerating aging. The other factor that we realized is that they claim to be anti-aging, but they were not developed to target aging itself. Like they were targeting the symptoms of aging. They were addressing the surface level of the skin, trying to, smooth out the upper layers of your skin, but they were not designed to go deeper and address what was causing aging at the cellular level. And because we are scientists and we were seeing everything that was going on in this longevity field, how much the science has evolved in the past 10, 15 years, that we now understand what's actually driving aging. And there are like better targets that we could focus to promote this age reversal effect. And that's when we saw an opportunity to shift our approach from testing products to now search for new molecules that can be more effective in addressing what we believe to be one of the main drivers of not only skin aging, but aging our whole body. But we decided to focus primarily on skin.
And so was the aha moment in realizing that all of these so-called anti-aging products weren't working, or did you see a path forward with peptide science? Yeah, I'm curious about that pivot from being a sort of tissue creation and study company to being actually creating products and solving this problem.
Yeah, I think the aha moment was when I saw a lot of companies starting out to target aging as their primary value proposition, but they were focused on targeting these new mechanisms of aging to address different age-related diseases, cardiovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, osteoarthritis. And we were like, if this common mechanism that's driving aging also happens in our skin, why we don't use that approach to target skin aging? And what I'm talking about is this process that we call like cellular senescence. That's the accumulation of old cells in our bodies. And these cells, they are detrimental to our tissues because essentially they stop functioning well. They start secreting inflammatory signals that induce the cells around it to age faster. So the more old cells that you have in your tissue, the more inflammation you're going to have, the more tissue degeneration you have. And there were several studies showing that if you can decrease the load of these old cells in a certain tissue, you basically make room for the healthy cells to replicate, to restore the function and the youthfulness of that tissue again. And for us, this was a very interesting approach that no one was exploring to skin aging. And that's why we decided to focus on trying to find the new molecules that could specifically reduce the load of these old cells in the skin.
At what age do people start to experience this senescent cell issue on their skin? And is it different for men and women?
Studies show that around our 20s, we start to accumulate senescent cells. There is a big shift in aging. We see from some other epigenetic studies around our 30s. So that's when like the buildup of cells becomes more significant. And then there is another kind of shift around like 45. And ideally, if you want to start from a preventative standpoint, you could start like in your mid 20s would be a good time to prevent the buildup of those bad cells.
That's like 2 decades earlier than I thought you were going to say. Okay, wow. So can you talk us through the process of discovering OS1, which is your proprietary peptide?
Definitely. Yeah. Once we decided to focus on a new molecule, we needed to first find models that would replicate skin age in the lab. So that's one thing that we got really good at, like not only growing skins, but really mimicking the skin aging. So we can basically expose the skin to UV rays and we can simulate the accumulation of these old cells by the exposure with UVA and UVB. So once we treated the skin cells with this stressor, we can see that we increase the amount of these old cells. And then we start testing like different molecules. We started with a library of 200 peptides. And from this first round of like testing, we got 4 that worked well. And then from these 4 peptides, we used an algorithm and we created variations in their sequences to try to get something even better. So out of these 4, we created 800 peptides. And these are completely novel peptides. Peptides, and for those who are not familiar, is essentially a chain of amino acids. It's the building blocks of a protein. And they can have these biological functions in our cells and in our bodies. So once we did the second round of testing of these 800 peptides, we found the OS1, that's the one that had the greatest effect in reducing the load of senescent cells. We saw that it could reduce up to 40-50% the load of senescent cells. we saw that it reduced a lot of aging markers like P16, P21. These are biological markers of aging. Basically, they increase with our aging process. And if we can reverse them, you're showing that you're basically reversing aging in some ways. We decreased inflammation and we increased collagen production and hyaluronic acid production to similar levels that we see with retinol or retinoic acid, but without the side effects. So for those who are familiar with retinol, it's the gold standard for anti-aging products. It works basically by inducing cell renewal. So the upper layers of your skin will come up. You are going to grow a newer, fresher skin, but you are not necessarily addressing the old cells that are underneath in the skin. And the problem of retinol or retinoids in general is that a lot of people can experience some irritation, redness, inflammation. So we see in the lab when we treat the skins with retinol, the inflammation markers going up, and collagen also goes up. But I think what we found here seems to be an alternative to retinol for those who cannot tolerate. Also, if you want to combine, then you can if your skin tolerates. But essentially, what we measured with this peptide as well is that we could measure what we call the skin's biological age by reading the skin's DNA or epigenetic signature. And we could validate that this peptide reduces the age of the skin in 2.5 years when we treated skins in the lab. And so this was really exciting because it was the first molecule ever validated that it can reverse the skin's biological age in a lab setting condition.
And Dr. Oliveira, how long did that process take to both discover OS1 and then validate it the way you're describing?
Yeah, it took us about 4 years, all of this testing, validation. And once we found OS1, because this was a completely novel peptide, we also needed to validate the safety, and also we needed to validate the safety beyond like the lab conditions. So we needed to run clinical studies. So total to complete this whole validation, it took us about 5 years.
Got it. And so just to go back to the senescent, or sometimes they're called zombie cells, how does OS1 like selectively target the senescent cells without harming healthy ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. In our studies, we see that OS1 actually gets absorbed by both the cells, the healthy and the senescent cells. We saw in some studies that when the senescent cells are still in their early stage, meaning that they are starting to accumulate damage, but they are still not like completely dysfunctional, our peptide can come in and can activate the DNA repair pathways and basically prevent these early senescent cells to become what we call late senescent cells, which are the cells that are really bad for our tissue, because these late ones, they are secreting a lot of inflammation. They are really causing this detrimental factor in the tissue. While if you can hold them in this early stage, they're not going to be too bad for our skin. The other thing that our peptide does for the late senescent cells that are already there, it's basically to shut them off, because if they're active, they are secreting inflammation. Our peptide is basically to shut them off so they don't secrete inflammation and they don't spread like this aging process inside the tissue. So in essence, what we see when we treat skins with our peptide is the skin treated has lower amount of these aging cells, lower inflammation, and then the healthy cells can replicate better because they are not being paired by the senescent cells that would be around if our peptide was not there.
Got it. So given all of that, I'd love to have you explain some of the clinical trials that OneSkin has done.
So the first one that we did was a split phase study in which we had one side of the participants we've treated with the full formula, which contains a lot of other actives on top of our peptide, niacinamide, different oils, allantoin, hyaluronic acid. So it's a very rich formula. And the other side had everything except the peptide. So we want to show how much the peptide was adding in terms of efficacy. And this study is really rare because it's really hard to see the effect of one ingredient. And we ran this study for 12 weeks. And after 12 weeks, what we saw in the side that contained the peptide is that this side had an increase in the barrier function that was significant compared to baseline, that was not observed in the side that did not have the peptide. We also saw better radiance in the side, and we also saw decrease in fine lines, wrinkles that were more prominent in this side with the peptide. So even if some of the changes were minor, was really interesting that the barrier function, meaning that the main function of the skin was improved by the presence of this peptide and was not observed in the other side. So this showed that you're going to see overall improvement in firmness, elasticity, hydration, tone. So since we're talking about skin health, the second product that we thought would be important to develop was a body lotion. If skin is important for your overall health, and it's not only about your face, neck, hands, like we want to treat your whole skin in order for you to have a stronger, resilient skin that will protect you throughout your life. So we developed this body lotion and containing the peptide and other actives. So ceramides will prevent like water loss and also other very potent antioxidants. From our studies in the lab, we see that this body lotion increased the epidermal thickness. But what we got really interested in testing about this product was treating your overall skin and how it impacts your systemic levels of inflammation. So because the skin is our largest organ and the main function of the skin is to protect our body, as the skin ages and deteriorates, the skin barrier also weakens and makes the skin more vulnerable. And so what happens with this process is there is an increase in inflammation that's coming from our skin because of the sheer size of this organ. Even low levels of inflammation that's coming from our skin end up impacting our internal levels of inflammation. So our hypothesis was, if we treat people's skin topically, can we actually show a decrease in inflammation in their blood? And so for this study, we recruited 30 participants that were from 60 to 90 years old. So when your skin already is more fragile. And they use the body lotion twice a day. We collect blood at baseline and we measured again after 12 weeks. And we could see that only by treating their skin topically, we saw a decrease in an inflammatory marker called IL-8. And we saw a tendency in decreasing other markers. And on top of this anti-inflammatory effect, which you could extrapolate that those markers of inflammation are associated with like chronic diseases, Alzheimer's, and all-cause mortality. So your skin should be, again, part of your health stack. But on top of this anti-inflammatory effect, we also saw improvement in the skin barrier, up like 40%, and we saw improvement in hydration by 34%. And this was way higher than the control group. So super exciting to show how we are doing studies in a different way that's not only about looking on the aesthetics, but also showing the broader health implications of our products.
Wow, that is profound. So that's fascinating to hear about all of the systemic implications far beyond aesthetics that come from the skin. I would love to double click into the eye and the other areas that you guys are targeting, and then also how you are thinking about sun damage and combating that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start with the eye. As we know, the skin on our face is a little bit different from our body, and the skin around our eyes is definitely different from the rest of our face. So the skin just under or above our eyes are 5 times thinner than the skin around our cheeks. And studies shown that the biological age can be 20 to 30 years older than the skin around our temples, which is really shocking, but also expected because we all experience the signs of aging around our eyes first.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we knew that this area of the skin accumulates more senescent cells, we realized that we needed a specific formulation that would target the accelerated aging process around our eyes. And so we decided to create a completely new formula. We increased the concentration of S1 peptide.
Mm-hmm.
We added other actives that would support the collagen production, elastin production. And we actually tested this new formula in eyelid skins that we got from partnerships with plastic surgeons that are doing like blepharoplastic surgeries. And it's so interesting because the skin is so fragile, and we needed to do a lot of iterations to get to a formula that was potent but yet very gentle, because a lot of people have sensitivity around their eyes. And the data that we got from this product was really incredible. We saw collagen production increasing 130% compared to baseline. And this was more than double than what we see with our face product. We saw the markers of aging decrease in a very significant way. Again, more than double what we see with the face product. And from our clinical studies, we got the strongest data in terms of increasing elasticity and smoothing out the fine lines and wrinkles. So this is the most potent formula that we have so far.
Could people use the eye cream all over their face?
Some people do. Some people do. I've done it. I've done it a few times. If you feel that you need some extra help, you can definitely do it. Safe, and it's just more potent and was designed for that specific area.
And then you've also formulated both a face and a body sunscreen, correct?
Correct. Yeah. As we know, UV exposure, UV pollution, blue light accounts for around 90% of how fast our skin ages. And UV exposure is the major driver of this process. And so we knew that having a sunscreen would be important as the first line of defense against skin aging. And it's just added that layer of defense. We added the other 5 antioxidants to this sunscreen. So you also have vitamin C, a very stable form of vitamin C on the sunscreen that you could potentially replace your regular vitamin C serum. We did tests comparing the antioxidant capacity of our SPF and other vitamin C serums in the market. And we saw that we could either be equal or outperform some of the regular vitamin C serums.
Wow.
And so on top of vitamin C, we have green tea, acai extract, so very, very strong antioxidants. And we have the peptide also in the sunscreen. So on top of protecting, the peptide also helps repairing existing damage. Usually the absorption of the peptide from the sunscreen is not as good as from the face moisturizer or the eye one, because the mineral layer compromise a little bit the penetration, but you still get the peptide, not in the same amount that you get from the face. So usually people like layering.
Amazing. And so as we think about the messaging and the marketing around all of this incredible science, did you and your partners know from the beginning that you wanted to be in the longevity lane as opposed to the beauty lane? I first heard about you through Peter Diamandis, who has been a longtime user and fan of the brand. And then OneSkin is a real darling of different doctors in the longevity space. So just wondering about how intentional you were from the get-go around being longevity, and you call yourself a supplement and not a skincare product.
Yeah, 100%. I personally, and I can say for my co-founders as well, like we were not obsessed with beauty. We are obsessed with health, and we want to use our science to make an impact in people's health. So for us, it only made sense to create this line to really impact people's health in some way. And so we would never develop a product that could potentially make people more beautiful, but compromise their skin health in some ways. it's really about health first, and the beauty aspect is a consequence of it. Obviously, I care about my appearance. I want to age looking at my best, but I want to do this in a way that I can also optimize my skin health and I can also optimize my body's health. So if I'm during my reproductive phase and I want to apply products that I believe are safe for my skin and for my baby, I trust every single thing that we develop because they are so rigorously tested in terms of the safety. We don't add any ingredient that could cause any toxicity. So health first was a must. And the idea of calling it a supplement, it connects really well with this purpose of improving the health and the function of our skin, because we take supplements to improve our internal body. We want to be healthier internally. So why we don't have a supplement for our largest organ? So that's when we had the idea of a topical supplement that would differentiate ourselves from the other skincare products in the market. They're calling anti-aging, that are more focused on like the beautifying aspect, while we come more from this improving the health and the function of your skin. And then as a consequence, your skin will be stronger, more resilient, will look younger as well, but more as a consequence of addressing the primary drivers of aging.
So it's just like exercise too, in that way of like the consequence is aesthetics, but really you're doing it for your health. And so what did this longevity focus mean for launch? You aren't launching another beauty brand. So how did you guys launch?
So we decided to launch direct to consumers. I think was a way that we could craft this messaging in a very unique way. We actually had Peter Diamandis on a webinar on our launch day, because we want to associate ourselves with people that are speaking our language. You know, Peter was an enthusiast about longevity for a long time, and that's why he connected so much with what we are doing. And similar, the way that OneSkin grew was by having other experts in longevity, key opinion leaders talking about our science and connecting with this overall approach of addressing aging at the cellular level, measuring, validating through different ways. And so we were also included in Tony Robbins' book that Peter wrote together with Tony Robbins. There is a chapter about beauty, and they mention our approach to optimize your skin health and appearance. David Sinclair also mentioned OneSkin in one of his podcasts about the science of staying younger longer. And he acknowledged the research that we were doing. And from there, today we have like several other experts that mention OneSkin because of the science and because of our positioning, our messaging. And we feel really grateful that this approach has worked, because it's fulfilling for us, but other people saw the value as well. And most importantly, we have hundreds of thousands of customers that are trying the products and are coming back because they are seeing the results, they're seeing the impact in their lives, and obviously in their appearance. But we have so many people that have some either a wound that would not close, and then they start applying the product around the wound and the skin recovers and heals. And we were not designed to address wound healing, but you see that when you recover like this skin health, there are so many potential applications in other areas. So it's really rewarding to see the feedback and the testimonials of so many customers and how this product is making their lives better.
And earlier you alluded to the bigger health stack that people have, or a lot of people think about their longevity stacks in terms of supplements and other protocols. You know, there's so many now. How do you think about OneSkin fitting into that broader longevity stack in terms of recommendations or partnerships or all of that?
Yeah, so we believe that OneSkin was created to be your skin solution when it comes to your health stack. We do believe that OneSkin fits in with other interventions. So that being like supplements, that being like you're tracking your sleep to understand how you're recovering, how you exercise and red light therapy and cold plunge and meditation. I think when you think on that stack, you want a solution that was designed to address aging from the cellular level, that would improve your skin almost from within, because that's what the peptide does. The peptide penetrates in the inner layers of your skin and works from the inside out. And so it really aligns with these other approaches. And our goal as a company is to continue to evolve the science and continue to be the leading when it comes to having the best solution to address aging. We know that science is not static. We found a peptide. This peptide is incredible, but we're continue to develop our science to have something better in the future. So in the future, instead of having a line of 30 different products that are doing the same thing, we have a new generation of our product that has a better molecule that can address aging in a more significant way. And so that's why people can trust us, because we're doing these studies, we are sharing directly with our consumers, either through our newsletters, through our clinical studies, or peer-reviewed publications. And we'll continue to do this as we grow. We have a team of 7 scientists that go to the lab every day, and we are very committed to have the best product for our consumers.
So you're looking for additional peptides beyond just OS1, like building a stable. And then would you consider alternative delivery systems as well, like oral, ingestible, or injections even?
Yeah, we thought about that. Orally or injectables basically enter into the FDA regulatory space, because this could be considered like a drug. And so we would need to choose an indication and run like massive studies. And for us as a small company, it's important really to focus on doing one thing really well. What is one thing that we can be the best in the world? And for us right now is to focus on skin aging. Eventually in the future, we can think of branching out into some of these other applications. A lot of people really want to already try the peptide themselves, but we're very cautious about doing the right studies before we bring it into this capacity.
So Dr. Oliveira, I think you've explained really nicely how OneSkin continues to grow in the longevity ecosystem. I'm just curious how you think about wellness as being part of that.
Yeah, I usually say that longevity is the new wellness, just because I believe that longevity has the same purpose of wellness, but with the validation behind. Like when you talk about longevity intervention, you should have the data, you should have the studies, we should have a real rationale behind the approach that you're pursuing. And I think wellness became a buzzword in the past decades or so. And it brought like a very important movement for us to take care of ourselves, and in some ways to get rid a lot of the toxic food chemicals that we were potentially put in our bodies. But I think it came together with a lot of noise and a lot of not validated solutions. And so I think they are obviously overlapping. I prefer to talk about longevity just because I'm immersed in this community that everything that you say, you need to prove it. And for us, it's a better way to deliver something, because we believe that this creates trust, and there is so many options out there. I feel like for the consumer, they needed to have this validation, because otherwise it's really hard to know where or how to trust. And yeah, that's kind of my take on this too.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say longevity is the new wellness. And I think a lot of people in wellness are seeing this rise that's just happening very suddenly, that's shifting the conversation in a lot of profound ways. And I think for people who've been in the wellness industry for a long time, there's always been that thirst for evidence-backed wellness. But I think longevity, to your point, comes at it with a different kind of validated scientific rigor, even though the goals are very aligned.
Yeah.
So OneSkin was really an early or even the first mover in longevity skincare. And now we're starting to see a little bit of other companies. L'Oreal comes to mind, starting to make noise around launching longevity arms of their business. What do you make of all of that?
Overall, I think it's great if it's authentic, if there is real evidence behind, because I think when we're talking about longevity, and so for people that are familiar with the field, when you talk about aging, there are basically 12 hallmarks of aging. And if you want to address aging, either you choose one or several, but you are showing how you are modulating some of these hallmarks of aging. And it could be mitochondrial function, it could be DNA stability. So there are several factors that are driving age. In our case, we're focused primarily on cellular senescence, that has been regarded as like the central hallmark of aging. And so I think if there is a clear approach and validation, this is good. I think more awareness for the field is good. If you're just jumping to a trend and put longevity on your brand and there is no validation behind, I think the consumer sooner or later will perceive that. As we said, longevity comes with data. And so if someone is claiming to be a longevity brand, the first thing that I would ask, okay, show me the data. Like what kind of studies you did, vitro, lab studies, clinical studies, where are the publications? And so I think in general, more people talking about longevity is good. I think we should talk about longevity for families, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many things that we can do today that can help us to age in a much, much better way that our grandparents and parents are aging. And we needed to be proactive and we needed to be more educated, but it needs to be authentic, it needs to be reliable. And so I don't want longevity to become something that people can't trust just because a lot of people are jumping to it without having the right credentials.
I think those are great tips for consumers of when you're looking at a new brand, you might look for all of those different types of tests and validations when we as consumers are considering a new brand, because there is a lot of danger that longevity is going to just be the new anti-aging, and that we're seeing longevity washing in the beauty space. One of the big takeaways for me on this episode is that the skin is a place where inflammation originates. So even though these are topical treatments, that we can bring down overall systemic inflammation through our skin is pretty fascinating. One of the things I always like to close out an episode with is asking our guests, what are the longevity practices that you find the most beneficial or meaningful?
Yeah, this is always a hard one because in the end, it's a combination, right, of different practices. I think for me, in the past few years, sleep has been like a very key focus of mine. So I've trying to, in many, many ways, optimize my sleep, like with a sleep tracker, or I take like magnesium before sleep. I try to avoid screens and I try to not get into any heated conversations before bed because I know that's definitely going to impact my sleep. And I think the other piece as an entrepreneur for me, it's really managing stress. Building a company, there are so many ups and downs and you're constantly putting out fires. So approaching problems and challenges with kind of a stoic, a behavior that you don't let the emotions really take over you, because we know how bad stress and cortisol is to your whole body and inflammation. But other than that, I do the basics like exercise at least 5 times a week, meditation. I've been trying to play a little bit more of cold plunge and red light therapy. But I'm fascinated about all the technologies and interventions. I'm super excited about treatments like PRP or stem cells that it can help you potentially heal better from any injury. I studied stem cells in my PhD, so I know the potential that these cells have. In many ways, it's basically reducing inflammation so your body can heal faster, but it has this amazing regenerative capacity that now we can assess. There are so many things that I'm excited about. The other thing that I'm really excited is about this ability to basically diagnose things better and understand what are the real healthy baseline of your biomarkers. So before we would only check your labs, and now we realize that this is not enough to really catch earlier signs of potential chronic diseases. I have a cardiovascular history in my family, and so I'm very mindful of the markers that I need to look at and other potential measurements that we can do earlier to understand a lot of things that can later on become like a big problem. But I think these things are at our disposal right now, and hopefully price will continue to go down and be even more accessible.
Yes, it's a great note to end on. Dr. Oliveira, if people want to learn more about OneSkin, where should they find and follow?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, oneskin.co, and you can subscribe on our newsletters. We share a lot of the studies that we run, we share the data. We invite people to be beta testers when we develop new
Oh, wow.
products. Yeah, and we share a lot of content around longevity in general. It's not only about skin health, so we have this holistic kind of educational approach, and you can find our studies or publications. So really recommend to go to our website and follow us on Instagram at oneskin.co, and I think on TikTok as well.
Well, it's going to be a household name soon. Dr. Oliveira, thank you so much for pulling up a chair to the Wellness Roundtable. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Alexia.
Now we turn to the Global Wellness Institute's Vice President of Research and Forecasting, Beth McGroarty, for some insight and commentary on what we just learned. Welcome back, Beth.
Thanks so much for having me, as always.
This week, I'm so excited to get your thoughts on my interview with Dr. Carolina Oliveira. She started a company called OneSkin, and they are a longevity skincare company, and they don't make creams and serums, they make skin supplements. OneSkin is really positioning itself not as a beauty brand, but as a biotech company. I'm wondering, from a trend forecasting perspective, do you see consumers gravitating towards this science-forward approach? Or is there still some confusion between clean beauty and clinically active longevity skincare?
Yeah, great question. Clean beauty has always been a murky term. We know that broadly means products without potentially harmful ingredients that are ethically sourced, that are environmentally friendly, and that have, quote, natural substances. I mean, this has been the beauty mania, right, for years. But with no regulations that control what can be marketed as a clean beauty product, no kind of on high guidance on what ingredients should be avoided or embraced, I think more people are becoming skeptical about the clean category. Although I just read that Mintel's most recent global report says that 9 in 10 consumers are now buying, quote, clean personal care products. So they're still buying. But coming out of the pandemic, there's been a rejection of unscientific, goopy wellness, and Goop was clean beauty headquarters, of course. We are seeing all over a sharpening demand for more science in beauty and wellness, and in beauty, that's lab-born skin solutions. So I think that the distinction between the clean beauty category and the new biotech and doctor-created skin longevity and health brands is getting clearer for people. I always suspected that part of clean beauty's appeal is that idea that you had a pure and natural look, but it's not surprising that clean beauty rose in tandem with people doing so many cosmetic procedures, because you really don't need any other beauty. So I was reading a really interesting brand new report by this VC firm called XRC Ventures, and their report shows clearly that clinical effectiveness now trumps clean positioning as people's purchase motivator in beauty, and that science-backed skincare is the biggest investment category now. So it's interesting. They identify the attributes of the new science-backed skincare brands. So one is their connection to biotech. So their use of ingredients like peptides, exosomes, growth factors. These are brands like Angela Caglia, Protocol, Exoceuticals. They're brands that have scientific founders that have medical backgrounds, dermatologist-led brands like Remedy, Prequel, Dr. Idris, and they're brands that do in vivo clinical trials with humans. So they're measuring changes in skin and in vitro testing with skin cells and tissue models. So these are like Lion Pose, 456 Skincare, Amaru. But, you can see that major growth for biotech and doctor-led beauty brands is ahead. It's a prevent rather than repair model. It treats skin supposedly. We want to know more about this at the cellular level. To quote, reverse skin's biological age. This is a new era, not of natural ingredients, but patents and biomimetic peptides. So
Totally.
I expect that there will be great research-driven, effective products and companies. It's also a space that's left the door wide open for science washers. So
yeah, I think there's like concern that longevity is the new term. So instead of talking about anti-aging, people are substituting longevity. Senescence and cellular aging are still new concepts to most consumers. Yeah. OneSkin, what they're really focused on cleaning up senescent or zombie cells. How do you see wellness brands, and they talk about themselves being a longevity brand, how do they bridge the science literacy gap, do you think, and maybe avoid the pitfalls you were talking about in the confusion around clean beauty?
Yeah, biotech labs are frenetically working. They're spending untold billions of dollars on cracking the codes around senescent cells, cellular aging, cellular repair, how to eliminate senescent cells. That these are cells that have stopped dividing but continue to secrete inflammatory factors, which drive age-related diseases. I mean, this is uber complex science, and wellness brands that want to sell this in any way need biotech and medical experts to help them bridge that literacy gap, to explain it to consumers, to identify what solutions have the most promise. And again, I hate to say it, the science literacy gap is fueling, not dampening, the excitement for things like cellular rejuvenation. Its complexity, its high price means that it has to work. And so I think...
like senolytics becomes the next sexy buzzword. And
yeah, senolytics are compounds that are designed to eliminate senescent cells. I mean, these are things like dasatinib, quercetin, fisetin. There's a lot of promising research in mice, which is the longevity trial's best friend because so little is done on humans. But that senolytics eliminate senescent cells, they reverse different diseases. There just isn't a ton of data on their safety and efficacy for humans, but senescence, cellular aging, tackling mitochondrial dysfunction. These are the new words that are just starting to fly around in wellness. I mean, I see spas, which will remain nameless, opening, quote, longevity spas that claim to tackle mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, without even explaining how they're doing it or what treatments do it. So I do think senolytics is really interesting and might be the next buzzword. There's always going to be a next buzzword, a next, as wellness is a commercial market and it works on the fashion mechanism. There's always a next. But honestly, just from my heart, the studies in longevity science and cellular rejuvenation are in such early promising days that it would be a terrible shame if biotech were infected by the market's fashion mechanism. We need linear progress with senolytics, with cellular repair. We can't move from next to next.
Yes. Beth, like you, I've been watching the skincare and wellness world for many decades, and I never predicted that skincare companies would be calling themselves longevity companies. Is this something that you could have seen coming?
I certainly did not see it coming. I think that if there's confusion for me, I'm sure there's confusion for other, you start understanding the relationship between getting to the molecular level at skin cells and cell repair and cell regrowth. And that makes sense. It's where you connect skincare longevity to human longevity. I think that they're playing a little bit on, some kind of fluidity between those things. I just don't understand how that would physiologically work. Healthier skin leads to a longer life. So, yeah, I think that clarifying, the difference between skin longevity or preventative approaches to skin, cellular repair at the skin level versus the longevity biotech, what they're working on. They need to like not be maybe exploiting the slippage a bit.
And I think there is interesting research going on around whether or not these creams that reduce senescent cells do bring down inflammation in the body more generally, that there might be a more generalized effect because a lot of inflammation does start on the skin. I'm not a scientist, but I think that's where some of the research is going on right now.
And I mean, all the work on the skin microbiome, the oral microbiome, that's a whole other important and interesting, more science-based, biotech-based future for skincare as well. There is a biome in the skin. There is a very complex biome in the mouth, in the vagina. This is important stuff to the research as well.
Yep. And now this ability, as you were saying, to like actually grow tissue in the lab and then test these different peptides that we can now find much more quickly with AI and so on. It is like a brave new world.
And I feel like when the breakthrough is really there, we'll all know about it.
Yeah, it's true. So let other people spend their money on this stuff now, and when the real miracle stuff comes. Yeah.
Well, it's like weight loss drugs. Who saw that coming? It changed the world in a year. So just because you can't predict something doesn't mean that it won't be radical, revolutionary, and change everything culturally and health-wise.
Yeah. Beth, on that note, thank you so much for another great segment. Appreciate your insights as always.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Wellness Roundtable. This podcast was produced by Emily Roberts and Ali Alkiza of Over Lunch. Music was provided by Mindstream. And a very special thank you to Susie Ellis, Nancy Davis, and the entire Global Wellness Institute team. As we wrap, it's important to remember that while this podcast is filled with valuable insights about the latest longevity science and innovations, it is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Our conversations are designed to inform and inspire, but should not replace the personalized guidance of your healthcare providers. If today's episode sparked your interest, please subscribe to our podcast, leave a review, and share it with friends. To learn more about the Global Wellness Institute, please visit our website, globalwellnessinstitute.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.